Arr, Mahadi. You're the weirdest parrot ever. Hello and welcome to the Battling Barrow, and yes, we in my D&D game we are hitting the high seas, so we need some rules for it. So in this video I've picked the rules and there's going to be a review of those rules. It's called Captains and Cannons and it's a rule set for D&D 5e by Drifters Game Workshop, and it's available on the DM's Guild, and it costs £6.42. Of course, in your country, with the different currencies, it might be different. I'm in the UK, so it's £6.42. So what do we get for our £6.42? You get 3 files, a version 1.1 and a final publishable one. These are very pretty looking PDFs with backgrounds and full colour art, giving them a very professional look. But more importantly for me, and this is something I wish all DM's Guild publishers would do, is a printer friendly version. I like physical copies of things, and if I'm printing something out for myself, I really don't want all those fancy backgrounds and all those pretty images. I just don't need the words and any required illustrations. There is an issue here though, as some of the illustrations that are sort of, in my opinion, required to explain the words and the rules are not included. A small oversight that could easily be fixed at some point, and I just hand drew those illustrations in anyway. So okay, that's the files you get, but what are inside the files? Well, there's 42 pages, and after an introduction which introduces some new terminology that will be used, you get to the rules. There are only 10 pages of core rules, so you don't have to worry about getting swamped by having to learn a lot of new rules. The rules introduce 2 phases, the character phase and the ship phase. The character phase plays out like a standard D&D turn, with players moving and taking actions. This is something I really liked about this rule set. Some ones that I looked at, some others I looked at, completely abandoned the players and just focused on the ship, so it was almost like a new game instead of D&D. I didn't like this, and Captains and Cannons does not do this. It still has that player agency. They can move, and what actions they take will affect the next phase. During this phase, the players can also control the ship's NPC crew to take actions. There are rules to streamline this process, as you can have a crew of say 40 or more NPCs, and you don't want to be doing individual actions with that, so you can do combinations of things. You can sort of amalgamate crews. There are a few new actions introduced that the characters can take. These are the sail action, and if you want to be able to move your ship, you're going to want to take at least one of these. For each character that takes this action, the ship gets to move a speed unit up to its maximum speed. To use this action, characters will need to pass a DC 10 strength check, and for each character that passes it, they get to add the ship's speed unit, and if they fail, they get to add half that speed unit. So if a ship has a speed unit of 10 foot and 10 characters take the sail action and pass, the ship will move 100 foot in the next phase. Okay, so we can move, but what about turning? Well, for that, someone will need to take the helm action. The operate action will allow a crew member to do something on the ship. The most common thing being is operating the weapons, either firing or reloading them. The command action allows the ship to add to its initiative. Now this is an interesting feature. You don't roll for initiative. Each ship has a set amount, with the characters taking the command action will add 2 to this. So the more command actions you take, the better chance you have of acting first in the next phase. And speaking of the next phase, this is where all the actions that have been taken are played out in the ship initiative order. Ships will move in a slightly different manner to normal unless the ship has the agile property. They can't just turn on the spot, so you have to move a speed unit first, and then you can sort of rotate 45 degrees. I won't go too much more into the rules, as this is a review and not a how to play. I can say that I really like the rules though. There is not much crunch as they are very streamlined, and this is kind of what I wanted, to get up and running and have exciting ship to ship combat. I didn't want to bog my players down with getting them to learn a ton of new rules that will play out like a separate game. It also allows the players to move around and still control their characters. So after the rules there is a DM advice and rules section, and this is also great. The way a DM ship is controlled is handled a lot differently to a player ship. You don't have to go through all rolling dice each crew. You won't want to go through that, all the rules that the players have to go through for the DM ships, because you could have almost a fleet of ships to control, and that would really slow down and bog down the things. So you don't have that. You can just sort of say, I'm allocating my maximum crew to the sail action, and you just get to move an average speed. So say 160 foot if you allocate all the crew members, and then the rest you can just say roll for combat as normal. Excellent. Next, there are environmental encounters and rules to challenge your players, as well as advice to make up your own encounters. This also covers rules for wind direction, which can affect the speed the ships can travel. With ships, there's all new equipment, and that is what the next chapter covers. This allows the players to buy new weapons and customize their ships. And finally, there's 3 appendices. The first are ship stat blocks, then a price list for new equipment, and the first are a couple of stats for crew and captains that you can use as NPCs. Now, the Ghost of Saltmarsh introduced ships to 5e when it was released back in May 2019, but Captains and Cannons came out in October 2018, so there are some differences, but it's nothing too bad, and I use a mixture of both. I use Ghost ship speed for when ships are not in combat and we go in like wilderness travel, if you like, long distance journeys, and then drop down to Captains and Cannons for combat and close encounters. And this is another thing I really like about this rule set. It can just fit seamlessly into your games, even pre-existing campaigns like mine that I didn't plan to go to see. It is great for that. They also allow me to use the big ship that I built recently for my players to move around on deck, and use when they go inside, we can use the whole maps I made, and then during the ship phase we can then use the mini ships I made. I have a water map from Fizo, I think it is, with a 1-inch grid that we use for the small ships I made. One thing I did change though is to abstract the ship speed unit away. So if a ship had a speed unit of 10 foot and a maximum speed of 160 foot, this now becomes 1 square as its speed unit and a maximum of 16 squares. It just makes it easier for us on the grid. I also know my players would want to do a broadside as soon as possible, and there weren't any rules for that. As I said, this is a very light crunch rule set, so I made a little house rule for it that if you have all your weapons loaded on that side of the ship and you fire them all at once, your attacks are made with disadvantage, but you get exploding dice where you get to re-roll any ones, and that one value is still counting towards the maximum damage. So if you rolled a lot of ones, say 6 ones, it's 6, and then you get to roll all those dice again. So what do I think about the rules? Simply put, I love them. There is nothing inside I really don't like, and some rules I've read I kind of think I'm going to do away with that. This, I'm using all of it. And if there is something missing though, as I mentioned, they're streamlined enough that you can add to it really simply. Most people won't want to do this, they'll just use them as is anyway. I can easily add in the crew quality and environmental hazards from Ghost of Saltmarsh 2, which is something I have done. It is a well written and nicely presented rule set and comes highly recommended. that is it for this review. You'll see this rule set. I've already started using it in my games. If you're watching the D&D long plays, you'll see it being used. But that is it for this rule set. Have you used it? Have you come across it? What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Are you planning to go to sea in your D&D games? If you are, would you think about using these rules after this review? But that's it for this video, guys. Until the next one, stay safe, take care, bye bye.